Alrighty, I don't know which one of us needs to intro this, but we decided to
The
do a
host.
little monthly chat here, just I don't know, talking through random things, coaching, uh, training nuances, nutrition nuances, bodybuilding nuances. So
Yeah, it should be good. Yeah, I think, we could talk about our coach-client relationship, coach-athlete relationship, and kind of talk about what we've done, and give a brief overview or summary, and then kind of rewind to the start and talk about what we've done. That sound
yeah,
good?
that sounds like a plan to me.
Cool. So, yeah, I guess we first connected in like 2019 ish, end of
Yeah,
2019, early
2019,
2020.
2020, one of the two. I don't remember.
Yeah. And
Somewhere around
then
that time.
it was after my first prep. And
Yeah.
then we finally connected for what would be your return to stage in the fall of 2021. But we started in May of 2021.
I think I
Um,
reached out to you in April, or I think April, and then we started in May, I think, of 21.
yeah, yeah,
Which
which
at
is
that point I think I had already started like a pre-prep phase.
yeah.
I think I took off like 20 pounds or something like that. I don't know, a lot.
Yeah, it's funny. I every single time I open your sheet, it shows those first weigh-ins, always, and I'll see somewhere in the, 170, 172 range, and I'm like, "Man, if we got down there now, it'd be like, okay, we're getting ready to slap some tan on and peak you." Like that would be, something.
We
Um,
pretty close to did that in 24. I mean, I
yeah,
was I was barely sub 170. Like
yeah,
165 by like Mr. America, but like Ontario, I think I was only seeing 169s.
that was like the lowest low, and then we started to bring food up afterwards, and then you're on stage in the 170s.
Yeah, yeah. So not too far off from the yeah, I think I was like 172-ish,
Yeah,
something like that.
post peak. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's such a
Which I was like or oh, I'm talking when it first came to you in 21.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
probably about that exactly though, like yeah, yeah. In
So
20.
we linked up May of 21, and then took that to stage, and then in the fall of 2021, and then followed that up with an extended off season from 2022 through 23 through the beginning of 24, and then we eventually began another contest prep, uh, for what would be targeting shows in the fall of 24, August/September. And that was where you won your pro card, of course, and then made your pro debut later on that season. And then since then, we've returned to another extended off season through 2025 and into 2026, where we are today. So it's a lot to unpack there. I
It's
think,
been it's been
yeah,
we're actually just past 5 years now we've been working together.
yeah, we just passed 5 years. I just made a note of that. It's wild. I don't know where that time went.
It's
Um,
crazy. Yeah.
so yeah, I think, just to provide anyone listening with an introduction and background, um, what what would you say caused you to reach out initially? Because you had gone through that pre-prep phase and you got pretty lean. Um,
Yeah.
so where were you at, like physically, mentally, and what caused you to make that decision? I think would
Yeah,
be
I mean, so I competed previously in 2018. Um, and I worked with the coach, worked with 3DMJ. Didn't work with them through my off season, but yeah, in general, I have a pretty good handle on what I need to be doing. But figured it would be in my best interest to uh get a coach, especially for a prep and someone an outside objective eye. Um, as you get leaner, your decision making isn't necessarily as sharp as it probably could be. So I knew that that was probably a good idea. So I had run, yeah, like I said, a pre-prep phase, got myself into pretty good condition, within like 10 pounds a stage or so, 12 pounds a stage, 10, 15 maybe, depending on the show. But yeah, so I knew I wanted to work with a coach. I did have plenty of time on my hands. I think you were the only one I actually reached out to. So I reached out to you. I think it was around April time frame, and then we got started in May. And yeah, I was targeting competing in the fall, primarily the Yorton Cup, since that was in Pittsburgh. I had turned pro in the OCB in 2018, so primarily the Yorton Cup, but filled some shows in around that. So the Yorton Cup that year was it in it was either October or no, I
think
think it was
it was
it
October.
was I think it was in October. Yeah.
Yeah.
I competed in November, but it was in October. So I had, what is that? Um like 6 months uh to you know to prep, which, and at that point, like, I'm like already like halfway there, more than halfway body weight wise, but probably halfway just in general, since the rate of loss needs to slow down. So yeah, like, I mean, and the reason I reached out to you specifically, obviously, like we talked about, we had a pre-existing relationship, um, but I like the fact that you had an educational background in in exercise science, and I thought that was a good skill. But not only that, but probably more importantly, that you were an athlete yourself and seemingly as obsessive as myself or similar, right? So for me, that's really important because it's one of those things where there's a lot of like this whole science-based lifting thing it's not new. It's like really become a thing in the last like year, but like there's people that are like kind of in it, but then there's people that are really in it. Um and yeah, I think the blend of the actual experience and the actual theoretical and kind of mechanistic side understanding. I think the hybrid of the two is the someone that I wanted, and just knows the ins and outs of like of what it takes to get into contest shape. And again, like, it's one of those things, like, the people that aren't in it don't get it, because I see like in the last couple weeks, there's been the thing about like AI coaches, right? That's a thing, which,
Yeah.
slight tangent, but I've seen a lot of comments under there like, all the information's out there, you could just do this yourself. It's
Can you?
like
You know?
you can, like, based on like theoretical stuff, but like, man, like, running a contest prep diet is just different than getting like beach lean, man. Like, it's just different. It's different. Like,
Yeah.
if you've never
Yeah.
been there, you don't get it. And straight up, like, I wouldn't want someone to coach me that's never been there. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Man, experience is your best teacher with contest prep specifically.
yeah.
You can know everything, just how things work in theory. You can be book smart. You can be really, really book smart. But there is just uncharted territory. The science hasn't reached the tail end of contest prep. When we when we look at the data, the highest quality data that we have on nutrition and even training, um, they're typically not done on bodybuilders at those final stages of a contest prep, right? So like we can understand how things work, if, for most people, but we don't have any data, or we don't have a lot of data, I should say, on just how things change. And there's so much. that happens from a psychological standpoint that I think that alone warrants having a coach, like you said, just detecting change. Like even even in my own preps, I will outsource that second eye at the very least for those final stages because I do this for a living, right? So I'm constantly assessing people's physiques, and even just in my own prep, I prefer to have that outsourced because for whatever reason your judgment gets clouded, and it's very difficult to make objective decisions. um, you can get really close, but I think most of the time those guys who get really peeled, they had someone at least collaboratively calling the shots.
Yeah.
It might not be like a, hey, this is what we're going to do. It's more so like a collaborative effort. But yeah, I think when when somebody's still doing this stuff, I think the SBL crowd right now, they are kind of veering off into left field for a slew of different topics. It's a tangential spiel.
Future podcast.
Yeah, but I think a lot of it is based on theories put together by some very intelligent individuals, but unfortunately they're not doing this stuff. Like they don't have skin in the game, right?
Yeah.
So if you are still doing this stuff and your progress or your progress on stage, your placings are dependent on your progress in the gym, you're going to be much more attached to what's truly working, what truly works, and less
Yeah.
to do with what is supposed to work in theory, right? So you're much quicker to potentially jump ship on certain training methods if you really don't think that something's working. And
Yeah.
you really know what somebody thinks then, right? You really know what somebody believes is going to be most effective because, for someone like me, it's like I have to be progressing, right? If I'm not placing better, right? I had that goal of turning pro, right? So whatever is
Your
facilitating that
money's where your
progress.
mouth
Yeah,
is,
yeah,
right?
exactly. And so if you don't have that skin in the game, it's not the end of the world, but it's like it's much easier to fall into that trap of getting too attached to your theories, right?
Yeah.
And emotionally attached to a way of training, a way of dieting, right? So yeah, I think those are good observations.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I first came to you, you were kind of a little bit newer on the coaching side of things. What were your thoughts going into it and throughout, um, you know, first impressions without, because, we had been friends, been chatting, but you didn't know me that well, right? So, what was that like from your side?
Yeah, so you were actually my first contest prep client.
Hmm.
I had one guy who was supposed to compete. We had him set up to do a prep that same year as well, but for one reason or another, it fell through. It just wasn't the right time, so we
Yeah.
had to push that back. So when you came to me, it was like, okay, this is for real now. Like you're actually a coach and not just, you know, helping people with uh, surface level stuff. It's like, okay, this is about to get a little bit more serious. And now I'm working with somebody who's like, done essentially everything that I've done. And so I'm not coaching somebody who is like behind me, if that makes sense. Or
Yeah.
usually when I take a client on 99% of the time, it's like, okay, this person's where I was 3 years ago or so. Right. And then that's usually, I think, the bulk of most people's clientele. It's like, okay, they've achieved something that I want. Right. And so that usually sparks the inquiry in most cases, not in all, but in
Yeah.
this scenario, it was like, okay, we're kind of like peers and okay, not that I'm intimidated, but it was okay. We're taking a step up with this, and I knew you were already really lean, and I was like, man, we don't have like much to lose at all.
Just in the
So
legs, basically.
yeah, and it was just about getting your legs, in stage condition. But I think. that changed my perspective on show prep dieting like a lot, uh, in a good way. Um, because you always think, and this is always said from the point of view of the athlete, you always think that you have, a certain amount to lose, and then you have to subtract another five, right? And it's like, okay, whatever you think you're going to get down to, like subtract another 5 to 10, and it's always like, well, no, and it that doesn't become real until you're actually there. But then it's like completely different taking somebody else through a prep, right? And then again, that changes your perspective on quite a bit, in your own training and your own dieting, and then as well as other clients. Um, so yeah, I there's so much I could say on that, because again, that was the first time I had taken somebody through prep. Um, and I think that facilitated a lot more confidence in just my own coaching skills, as well.
Yeah, and it's funny because you started me on that prep with a slight surplus, which is
Yeah, yeah,
interesting.
yeah. We're like, okay, we should probably just, start a quick reverse, because we don't really need to start a deficit for a while.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and then getting into kind of that season, uh, the first show I did was Mr. America that year. A little bit of I'll call it turbulent peak. Well,
Yeah.
I know what it was like on your side. I didn't find out till after, but yeah, go into that.
Yeah, that so we took a pretty, linear straight shot diet to the Mr. A there. And I think we were ready beforehand. Like we weren't like taking this as a warm-up show by any means. Um, I
Yeah, this
think,
is maybe 2 weeks before the Yorton. I think it was 2 weeks before. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I just remember that side shot, uh, he sent in posing trunks, and glutes were, pretty much in. Uh, and it's like, okay, well, all we need to do is fill things up at this point. And I know that, I guess, since it was semi-local, you were able to drive to it, right? And
Yeah, this
yeah,
7 hour drive or
yeah,
so, but
yeah, yeah. So you
yeah.
drove, and
Or
it
six and a
was
half, 6.5. Yeah. I think it turned into over seven driving through Philly, which made it worse. But
yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. And so we brought water up with the carbohydrates, and I just remember, uh, communicating with you like on those load days, and like, man, I'm like getting steps at the gas station, but I'm also like pissing like a racehorse, and it's and
bro,
it's kind of a stressful peak, and
I remember sitting in like if anyone's driven through Philly, it's a disaster. Like it's just like it's stop and go. Like we're almost regardless of what time. And I'm sitting in Philly traffic, like having to pee. Like there's and I'm just like tapping my foot. I'm like I have to pee, and I find the next stop, and yeah, yeah,
and then I think that next day when you finally got to the Airbnb, you woke up and, clearly holding a lot of water. And
yeah, yeah.
I remember it's like, okay, send me pictures like first thing in the morning. And I remember like waking up, uh, and
I think it was that would have been 2 days out. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I remember hearing my phone buzz, and I was like kind of still waking up, and I knew, okay, finally, yeah, here we go. And I looked at the pictures, and I had like the biggest stress response, because, it was again the first time I had taken somebody through a peak. But it was like, I know how this is supposed to go, right? I've been through a peak myself. I was obviously I have Chris with me. And I just remember looking at my phone, and I'm like, what is going on? And that woke me up like so quick. Like usually it takes a good bit for me to, actually wake up and fully wake up, before I have my
Yeah.
first one. But that was like, oh my gosh, okay, I'm awake
And I
now.
think I think I fed you the context of that, like when I sent it to you, like, yo, this is like I know this is a rough look. This yes, I think because I think I also was like and I was supposed to be out on vacation, but I was getting slammed with like work emails and like it was just that was probably the most. And I got in super late, went to the grocery store, got to bed late. It was just like the whole thing, like the whole trip was a disaster. And I was like, bro, this today was which was the day I got in, day before was literally the most stressful day of that entire prep.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And, and it showed
Yeah,
my look. All that water and food, and it just was like, yeah,
it was it was like all in your midsection, and the rest of your body looked fine, but it was all in your midsection. And
yeah.
I was like, no, no, it wasn't stress. This was the food, because I was so concerned with spilling you. And that experience also confirmed, like, I had I had always been erring on the side of being super conservative with peaks, but
Yeah.
then over the course of my prep and in 21, because we were prepping at the same time, uh, I loaded on a lot of food and still really didn't spill. And so that was another thing I think really, really changed my perspective on a whole lot. Again, you learn by doing. I think
Yeah.
with this stuff, it's huge. And so rewind to that day, 2 days out, we we agreed, okay, let's just, continue follow through with the plan, and um, things will likely wash themselves out. And yeah, sure enough, you're fine after, a day had passed, and one day out, that next morning, things look
Looked
substantial.
dramatically better the next day. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I made an effort to just kind of relax and chill, and
Mhm.
I, I mean, it's part of the reason I went out early, right, in the first place. But yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that I so I did take something from that. Uh, Whenever I flew out to a competition, whether that was 23 or 25, um, I I always got there a day earlier than I had initially planned. So like usually shows are on Saturdays. I I think in 23 I got to Washington at it was either Tuesday or Wednesday. I'm like, I just, because the same stuff would happen to me through travel. Like, it would just retain a ton of water. And I think it's just something to do with being sat in one spot for hours. And then, like, okay, if I can get there, just make some steps, do some steps, and make my food, and, just follow through with the plan, have my fluids, and things just clear as stress drops. But there's just something about traveling. I I see
yeah.
I see weigh-ins fluctuate for like everybody, even if they're like, on point with things, just because they were traveling for one reason or another, their routines off. And yeah, but yeah, that was interesting. That was super wild actually to see your look change that dramatically. And so, they always say stress can really wreak havoc on a peak, but that was like
Yeah.
a prime example.
It is. And it's one of those things like it doesn't necessarily show on a spreadsheet, but like it's right there in front of you, right?
Yeah, yeah. Because you're seeing a scale weight increase. Like, yeah, we just ate a bunch. It was the first load day, right? And you're supposed to see a scale weight increase. But if you're not assessing things visually, you're thinking you're a lot fuller than you actually are, because some of that is, water weight, that's driven by increase in stress, traveling, and oh, you could probably handle a little bit more, right? But you wouldn't think that if you were
Yeah.
just looking at numbers. So yeah, visuals, you have to be willing to adjust. If the coach sends out a peak week plan like a week early, and that's the plan, no room for error. It's not subject to change. It's like that's probably a red flag. I send out an outline usually, like we've
Yeah.
normally done. Um, but I always make a note, 100% of this is subject to change. Like, we can have our calculations put in place, but there's a chance that we might need to modify things for one reason or another. So yeah, just another, you learn by doing. Experience is the best teacher with this stuff, but it's very important to understand on a conceptual, theoretical basis just how things work.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing I jumping back a little bit, but the um with when you're loading a lot of food, talking about travel and stress, and I do think like you mentioned it, but like the extended sitting is just I don't think it's a good idea when loading a ton of carbohydrates. I really think you need to move,
Mhm.
walk, steps, like light pump work, just moving, just it just makes a difference in the way that food, what it does, right?
Yeah, all that. Yeah, everything's kind of pulling in that area, and I think that was another reason why I had opted to fly out a day early so I could
Yeah,
be traveling on a low day, and not on a loading day. And
yeah,
the it's really common through peak week protocols for steps slash cardio or just any activity outside the gym to be tapered, as food comes up as a means to drop stress. But I think that, like you said, can also backfire if you're not moving.
yeah,
So, we know how helpful steps between meals can be from a
yeah,
digestive standpoint. Um, but I do think if you're, on a walk that's long enough, I do think that does make a difference with how the food is processed, and how those nutrients are partitioned. Um, so yeah, typically, man, I there's so much that this particular prep influenced like the rest of my coaching career. I don't do that now. Like, again, that was another thing that in theory you would want to do, but
do
I
what specifically?
to bring steps down, and
Yeah,
bring cardio down. And now I just say we are keeping as much similar as possible. We're just bringing food up and
yeah,
potentially bringing training stress down a little bit, but everything else we're going to keep the same because if you go through like a refeed and you're, say, 8 weeks out, you're not doing any of those things, right? But you generally like how you look,
yeah,
and things aren't tapered from a training standpoint. Things aren't tapered, you know, with regards to activity. And you never, at least in my experience, I've never looked at my look post refeed and thought, yeah, that would look a lot better if I stopped training, if I pulled my steps down.
yeah,
So yeah, I think another takeaway that I had from that prep was the less you can change during peak week, assuming that you're ready, which you should be before going into that week.
yeah,
But the less that you can change, the better. It just for every reason possible. Like, I think that the small benefit that you could get from like super compensation, unless you really, really, really know your body and you've done this several times, I think again, try to minimize those changes just because it could stress you out. So like if it was me, knowing that we were gunning for a certain maneuver with peaking that could backfire. I think that alone, just knowing that potential is there, I think that would stress me out so much that the benefit would actually like kind of be a wash, and
wash, yeah,
it would. I don't even think I would respond super well. Like I said, when we were both in Massachusetts, I was just loading and loading and loading, trying to get that effect. But I knew it was kind of like a moving target, and it just didn't pan out as well as I would have liked.
yeah.
So yeah, I think there's a time and a place for a multitude of different strategies, but when in doubt, change less.
Yeah, I mean, and then it just gives you more control, right? Like, obviously there are variables that you do want to change. You don't want to run, you could, you don't want to run low days all the way up to show day, right? It's like Well, we want to load glycogen, so we got to make that change. But I think it's using a large amount of discretion with the changes that you're making, like being deliberate. Like, yeah, this is probably makes sense to pull this, but it's like if there's not a great rationale for changing something, it's like,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. And if again, if you're someone who stresses about this stuff, it's like when in doubt, you know your refeeds worked, right? You know those, 3, 4 day periods where you had 2 load days and then you're back to normal, and then that look after that first day back to normal. It's like if that was consistently really, 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 really good, it's like why veer away from that? I again, there's a time and a place for taking other strategies,
yeah.
for sure. I think when in doubt, yeah, just go with what works.
And I think with peaking, it's one of those things like once you get you can use the refeeds as data, but like ultimately until you really go through the actual peak, that's when you really know.
Yeah,
Because you're usually loading a little bit harder than you do for a refeed, right? Um, but like getting a few of those under your belt just gives you so much data in context for future. Because yeah, we tried different loading strategies in 2021. We even for the Yorton, we kind of ran like a after the Mr. America, which was ended up being a good peak.
mhm.
We tried the deplete and load for that the Yorton, and not as great of a result, I would say, as the more
Yeah,
linear. So, yeah, I mean, we just kind of, I mean, collecting that data was very helpful.
yeah,
Especially going into, 3 years later, 2024, we were able to pretty get, I don't say 100% nail it, but like pretty damn close in like the first run, right?
yeah. It was like spot on. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was really spot on. Yeah, so I think, yeah, you brought up a good point there, and I think that was the primary thing that I was referencing. So we had for that second peak, we had tried to set up the load with a couple low days prior to, and
Yeah, you
I
brought
have
fats up too, and
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. So the first day we brought fats up. Second day we also did, but the primary thing was carbohydrates were coming down as a way to kind of set up the load days.
yeah,
And I've seen people respond really well to that. And I've seen people achieve a level of fullness that they weren't able to with, just refeeds alone, or going through a peak without going through those lower days. And that, I guess, sort of sensitized them to carbohydrates just a little bit, because they weren't like fully like burnt or depleted by the time they were getting into peak weeks. So
yeah,
uh, it worked pretty well. But I've also seen, and this was the case with me, if I go through a day like that, I will never feel that. That just for whatever reason, like if I did a day with very, very, very low carbohydrates, like sub 50, I would need almost like an entire week to completely fill back out. Um,
yeah,
and I in Massachusetts, I think I broke 2,000 carbs over that 2 day period.
yeah,
And I still, like, on show day, I wasn't, granted, I wasn't 100% from a conditioning standpoint, but it was for whatever reason, I couldn't get, like, there are certain muscle groups I know when they're like fuller, I know, all right, I'm pretty close to capped off. I could not for the life of me get that because I had run what would be considered ideal on paper with, those 2 lower days prior to. And it's like,
yeah,
that works for 9 out of 10 people I've coached, but for whatever reason, it's this really just isn't working with me. And same thing with you. We had a decent look, I think, but I think a different approach for both of us worked better in that
yeah,
we got ready, before the peak. And so we didn't need to. really deplete things. It's like we're already kind of there. And so let's just take advantage of the extra time that we have and let's bring food up, but not as much as like a full load, but over a longer period. And some physiques just need that, just need a longer amount of time to really fill up. Um, and it works. It works really, really well. And it worked awesome for your for your 24
Yeah,
debut.
yeah. Um, and before we get into maybe 24, so that 21 season, the last show I did was the Monster Mash. Um, so that was maybe a few weeks after the Orton, which I didn't do quite as well at the Orton as I would have liked. I will self-blame on a lot of that just due to like to be blunt, like very poor posing. Um, but anyways, the I did do the Monster Mash a few weeks after that, and I think, and like I was definitely a little burnt out by that point. Did I bring a decent look to Monster Mash?
Yeah, yeah. I think
Yeah, but I think I was just psychologically, physically pretty burnt by that point. So what was that like seeing that from your end? Because and then you got to see me in person. I think it was actually the first time we actually met in person was from
yeah,
MASH,
yeah, yeah,
which was
yeah.
an
We
interesting way to
played the
be.
game to be.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
when we're
yeah.
both competing and like I'm kind of
Mhm.
burnt out and we
Yep.
still had fun, but like yeah,
Yeah, yeah. That was so. I think I don't want to say like "Oh, you should have won, and been that guy, that coach who says that, super biased. Um, I think so. You placed second in
in
that
my
class,
class, yeah.
so you were just as lean as the guy who won,
I
and
was definitely leaner than the guy that won.
yeah. So you were
He was way
essentially,
bigger than me though.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
He actually was a guy that was a former pro and was the
yeah,
OCB.
yeah.
He
He was,
actually had
yeah, yeah.
gone toe to toe with like Siobhan Cunningham. Like he was
Mhm.
really good, but he was definitely not in the shape that he was when he was competing against Siobhan.
Yeah, yeah. So
He was way bigger than me, but
I think it was probably like if you looked at the judges' scorecard, I would say it was probably a unanimous, okay, he's one, he's two, and then the rest, third, fourth.
yeah,
Um, but I think it wouldn't have been that way if you brought 24's posing, where you improved there. I think there would have been at least a handful of shots that would have gone your way. Um, but yeah, I think I know exactly what you're talking about with the just being burnt. Um, I was exactly in that same position after the mayhem last year, and it's it's interesting because we we didn't need to get more fat off. It was just that the diet had lasted so long, right? We started the deficit in, I guess, it would have been June, right? 21,
yeah,
and that ran all the way through November, and that was very similar to my last prep. And granted, it's not 100% of that time is spent in a deficit, right? But when you've been in it for that long, it's just like energy's zapped, motivation starts to dip. And even if
yeah,
you're someone who's really, really, really driven and in this for the long term, like my desire to continue was like Worlds is 2 weeks away. I honestly just didn't care. I was like, I don't even want
yeah,
to binge. I don't even want food. I'm just like, man, I'm tapped.
yeah. I think knowing when to call a season and not just stretch it out, I think is a good
Yeah.
thing to keep in mind. Because for me, like how I did at the Orton, which I took second to last, it
Mhm.
was definitely like a stinger. But it left me like, okay, am I gonna still stretch this out? I wasn't even sure if I was gonna stretch it out longer. And then was like, well, I want to maybe try for a WNBF pro card. Maybe let's do this show, right? And I think it was only th 3 weeks. Um, but I've been on the other end where like, and again, this is jumping to 24, but just comparatively, where I did what I set out to do, had the option to extend it, and just said, no, it's just not worth me digging myself a deeper hole for this. Like, I got what I wanted out of it. I don't feel burnt out now. Let's let's just chop this before I get to that point, right?
Mhm.
Um, so
Yeah, like right before you hit that point, I think is like all right, we know we've given everything, we've exhausted the physique, there's nothing to get off, and it's not supposed to be sustainable, right?
yeah,
You're not supposed to be able to hold that look very long. And I think if you have a really long season and you do show up 100% for that first show, which I believe you should. Like I just don't. I'm not a fan of warm up shows. Like if you're gonna get on stage, you may as well be there and ready. Um, but yeah, if you're ready in the Mr. A was in October, and we were like at
mm,
the tail end of November. It's like, oh, we're holding a stage ready physique for a good bit,
oh,
right?
well over a month, right?
Yeah, and it's like, yeah,
7 weeks,
you
something
can
like that,
bring
6
speed
weeks.
up, you
Yeah.
can reverse, but again, so that's only going to last so long. Um,
And it's probably also worth noting, like that was for me that fall in general was work-wise ridiculously busy. Like traveling from like I think like around August, like or September through November. I think between shows and work travel, I was home like 50% of the time. I think I looked at it. I think it was about 50% of the time I was home, which is somebody who's like I'm used to being home like 99% of the time. It was just a lot. So that's probably also another factor to throw in there that it's just this is like and work was just crazy busy, right? So it's just like just from so many ends, I was just very burnt out. Um, which I have a pretty high threshold for what I could tolerate, but I was definitely a little overfilled, and my cup was definitely spilling over. So
I would agree. I think those placings were largely due to just development and time in the game. Uh, because I know we had spoke about that like post show immediately because it's like, oh, you never want a placing like that. And it's like, even though everything went right up until that point, it's like it's still soul crushing. And I think because there were some big names at both of those shows, right?
which ones? The Orton and the
Yeah, and the Mr. A, right? Because you,
yeah.
you were in the pro division in Classic, and I remember there were some bigger names in that lineup, um, who had been around for a while. And I remember thinking, like, just, I mean, dude, imagine you with 12 extra years of training under your belt.
Uh,
And it's like it's not even comparable. Like the physique, it's just the quality of muscle. It's going to be apples to oranges. It's very hard to make it out of a class like that. Um, and I mean, that was really evident, say, and again, we can talk about the comparisons between preps later, but
yeah.
um, I mean, the placing was way better in Mr. A in 24, and I think that was largely due to the amount of muscle you put on, and
Yeah.
just
Yeah, I
the
mean the look I brought 24 was just dramatically different.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And my ability to present it was way better too.
Mhm.
So yeah, it was just a multitude of factors. But yeah, man, after 21, had a little bit of a just a tough transition, just post show, that phase transitioning into off season, food wise mostly, which some of that was in my control, but Me being burnt out didn't, or it was within my control, right? But me being burnt out didn't help. But I think I did, or I know I did settle into like a normal off-season groove, with things within like a couple months or so. So what was that like from your end, seeing me enter into off-season mode and then like yeah, like those 2 months aside, like not that I was like skipping training, like I never missed sessions or anything, but I was just definitely I was overeating. There are times I was just overeating, binging, etc. But once I got into a more normal groove, what was that like on your end? Seeing me go through like I'll call proper off season.
In terms of, do you want to talk about the reverse itself or like the off season?
Probably more so the off season. The reverse we could talk about. Like we could talk about that. I wasn't particularly adherent diet wise, so
Yeah, I mean
uh
that definitely it definitely served as a huge reminder to me, or it was kind of a, I don't want to say a wake up call, but it was like, oh, man, if he's struggling with this, this is probably something that I should really, really look to master myself. Because
yeah,
if if someone like you is struggling with this, then more than likely every single client who I take through a prep is probably going to struggle with this to some degree. Um, and that was a huge reason why uh, I reversed out very conservatively in the last few preps that I had.
yeah,
Like, okay, I got to experience this and really iron this out myself so I can take people through it. But yeah, I think in terms of the off season, one, it was really, really good to see training loads start to move in the positive direction. It was like almost immediately reflected in your look. I
yeah,
just remember things were like so dang full in your muscle, and I knew, I'm like, man, if we just fixed posing like 50% of what we need to fix, I think
yeah,
we can get what we're after here. And um, yeah, I'm like, if he has a really good off season, which I have no doubt you would, because going in, following your training very closely, knew it was like very spot on, very adherent. And if we had multiple years of that, oh man, there's going to be so much muscle built, and then we're going to have all this data that we have from the prior prep going into the next prep. Man, it's going to be good. It's going to be a while, but it's going to be good. And so, yeah, I know the main areas that we wanted to bring up were lats, and
yeah,
back thickness was pretty good. Um,
yeah. Thickness is not really been a problem for me. Yeah,
yeah,
but lats specifically.
yeah, I think like in general, you have a very dense physique for your age, which is a good thing because it's very hard to achieve. Um, so width, that was what we really, really wanted to bring up. And I think by just picking some low-hanging fruit with exercise selection and
Yeah,
you know executing certain lifts slightly better, I think that paid off so much. And it was like we didn't even have to make a whole lot of changes to your training outside of those two sessions. And yeah, I know those poses, your front lat and pretty much all of your symmetry poses as well. Aside from posing improvements, took a massive step forward because of the width improvements. So, excuse me, that was really, really cool to see.
yeah. I think we sat down. I think it was right around January of right
Yeah.
after that prep, January of 22, and we put together a plan. And I was like, all right, we'll do this, and ran that for I think like what, yeah, the entire off season. I
Yeah,
think I made like
run into the ground. Yeah.
a couple movement swaps here and there, like a wide grip pull down for like the wide grip not the chin, the
Machine. Yeah, it was like a machine, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, but other than that, I pretty much kept it. Um, yeah, so and it is also one of those things like I'm still working on correcting some stuff. Lat there's certain I think everyone has like certain muscles that they just have more trouble connecting with and deliberately directing tension into. And like lats is just a tough one for me. Still is, but yeah, required a little bit more attention to detail.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, there's something there, and I'd just written that in a caption that I had put up. Um, you if somebody says that they have a weak point, or if you see a weak point in their physique, uh, and you watch them train, it's almost always extremely evident in just how they train. And you don't
yeah,
necessarily need a PMID to know that this is true.
yeah,
Um, Guys who struggle to bring their quads up typically, what do their limb lengths look like? Really short torso, right? Long femurs, right?
a
And
lot of very hip dominant squatting. Yeah,
right, exactly. So that's exactly it, right? But if you look at other muscles, glutes adductors, it's like they're probably very developed. And so, to add to that, if you think about like those muscle groups that you really, really don't have a problem getting to grow, or just maybe those were the first ones to respond when you first started training. Just think about how easily you can connect with those. Like my chest, fortunately, my lats. Um, I get like a pump, swell up just from warm up sets. Like I'll be at the start of a workout, maybe a third of the way through my acclimation up to my working weight, and I already feel a difference in that muscle. So
yeah,
it's interesting because I have essentially been doing the same thing, except with my quads. Improving execution, just doing everything I can to get more knees over toes, and um, working around poor ankle mobility. And I had always noticed that there was a certain region of my quads, like the more proximal portion, like that sweep, but like closer up to your hip. For whatever reason, that if I got a pump around there, I knew that, oh shit, like that muscle group had been seriously worked. But by that point in time in the session, or in the day, I am completely shot. I am like absolutely obliterated. I'm not doing anything else. So one thing I had noticed through just tweaking things and tweaking things and tweaking things, I've gotten that same biofeedback cue earlier and earlier on in the session. And so like I'm getting that same pump without feeling as beat up. And it's come earlier and earlier as a result, I think, as a result of improving, execution, technique, accuracy, form in those like really, really hard reps. So I have to think that that's improving the quality of work, because it
yeah,
also feels like I can do more. So like I'm finishing my last set on compound A, going into compound B. I'm like, oh, I could have probably done another set there. And then I finish, all my sets on, the second compound. I'm like, oh, I'm, cruising into the end of this session here. And usually it's like if I'm progressing, I am absolutely trashed. And that was a huge bottleneck in the past, was okay, how can I get more for this muscle group? Because I can feel it. It just needs more. I'm rarely
yeah,
sore. Not that these are like causative of growth, but more so they're reflective of the quality of work that's been done, right? So like it's a sign that you've moved really well. You've trained the muscle, pretty well. And I'm like, how am I gonna possibly add more work if I'm like absolutely trashed by this point. But again, technique has improved, and it's like the volume tolerance per session has now gone up because more of that tension is being devoted to the areas that we need it to be.
Yeah.
Uh, it's just this is all anecdotal, but you know, I'm sure you've experienced this as well. If you get on a really, really, really nice machine, it usually feels like you can do a lot of work there. In comparison to say like a not so good machine. Like the difference between say like a prime row versus like a hammer strength row, right? It feels like you can do a lot more sets and it's not going to
Yeah.
absolutely kill you on the prime versus like a lower quality brand. And it doesn't even have to be a bad machine. It's just there's something about those really, really nice Atlantis pieces, prime pieces that you like, you get done with the set and you're like, okay, that region that I was trying to train there, it
Is
was
smoked.
absolutely smashed. But I'm like up off the
But
machine and I feel
systemically,
fine.
I'm good, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right, right. And so if you, I've always wondered, I'm like, why, like, how is this happening? How it's just a really good machine, but it's like, well, what is it creating? It's forcing you to use really, really good technique, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think there's a lot there, and my gut tells me that that's the way forward, and at a more advanced stage for guys like us, because
Yeah. It's one of
it's
those
usually
things.
not
It's
to do
like,
more, right?
yeah, it's like the maybe the old head that said, you don't, bro, you don't need the 50-pound dumbbells. You could do plenty do that with the 30s. Maybe
Yeah,
it's
it's like,
partially they're right because it's like
yeah, yeah,
you're working your whatever your biceps like really hard with the 50s, but like you're swinging them like crazy. Like you're not holding tension on the bicep throughout that entire versus like just feeling and driving that tension exactly where you want it throughout the entirety of the set and just holding it, which is really difficult to do because it's not comfortable. Um, but
yeah,
it's a lot less just flinging weight around and then hoping it works, right?
yeah, yeah. You know that saying where, oh, if you get up to a 315 squat, uh, you're probably going to have decent legs. Or I've never seen someone who could squat 315 for 10 have subpar legs. Well,
Yeah.
I get my squat up. It's not super impressive, but I had my best was a 385 for 8 on a back squat, and I looked down and my quads are like still like completely vert. There's no sweep, and I'm like, this can't be it. So it's like it's clearly not my quads failing here, right? And so
Yeah.
it's something else. But I think most of us know that the technique that we need to be using is going to require such a load drop, and that's not like an ego hit. Like the difference in loading for like arms are another one for me that's it's pretty difficult for me to bring up for whatever reason. um,
Yeah.
the difference in strength when I start using an arm support or something that stabilizes my shoulder, it's drastic. If I did like a free weight curl with, my arms kind of just by my side, there's nothing, supporting my upper arm or keeping things in a fixed position.
Yeah.
Um, I can sling a bunch of weight up, like way, way, way more than my arms would suggest I could. But as soon as if I did a curl like with my back against the wall or like um, on a preacher bench, I know that's a completely
Yeah.
different exercise, but the strength difference is so drastic. And I'm like, okay, well, my biceps have to be working in this preacher because what else could possibly be moving the weight, right?
Yeah.
So it's likely that something else is contributing, right? If you're, I mean, my strength difference, I was using like 65s for the alternating dumbbell curl. I get to a preacher and I'm like 30 for like the same amount of reps. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that's
There's
huge.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, there's something going on there. And I'm like thinking, okay, I've been training for a while. My form can't be that bad. And, but yeah, it's more often than not, like what technique, what it should feel like. But
Yeah.
part of me over the course of my training career has been like, oh, there's no way that's right because I'm so weak here. There's no way that this is right. Like, you use a really knees over toes dominant technique on a hack or a pendulum, and your load drops way down if you've been, historically a hip dominant squatter, and you're like, there's
Yeah.
no way this is right. Like I'm losing output here for like some other reason. There's no way that this is right. Like my quads aren't getting enough from this, but it's like, no, you might just be weak here because you're lacking in development in this region. And maybe
Yeah.
the prime mover here is just underdeveloped and not as strong. That's been my experience. And so yeah, a lot. You can take that a ton of different directions.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, that's a lot of what I've been going through too is like how can I'm trying to train this. How can I direct tension there as much as possible?
Yeah, yeah,
Not just move weight from and it's like it's also like, it's like moving it from shorten to lengthen, but it's like how you move it there. Are you moving it like with other things? Is it linear? Is it arcing? Like, I mean, you especially think about like the muscles that like do abduction, things like that, or adduction. It should travel in an arc, not in a line. So if like your body can find a way to make it travel in a line
yeah,
versus an arc, but the
yeah.
arc is where it's like you're holding tension the whole way, but it's harder, right? Uh,
You're trying to minimize efficiency, right? Your body wants to work in like a kinetic chain, right? It
yeah,
doesn't want to work in isolation because it's very inefficient. And we kind of hack our physiology in a way by
yeah,
providing tension that it wouldn't otherwise experience because we're putting ourselves in a disadvantageous position. And so sometimes with weaker areas, we need to follow that train of thought even further.
yeah. And it's like, okay, is the goal to move weight or is it to just apply high degrees of tension and take that tension to the point where it can't anymore, right?
So now we know where the old guy, the old head in the gym is coming from.
Yeah,
My
yeah,
biceps didn't grow until I started using the 20s. It's like, it's overkill, but you can see where he's coming from now.
yeah, yeah. Maybe not the 20s, but like, yeah, you don't need the maybe you don't need the 50 the 65s for you. Like you need
Yeah,
like
yeah,
the 30s or the 40s, right? Like
yeah.
so. But yeah, it's funny how we have these chats a lot. It's like, maybe those people that we were saying, oh, they're just whatever meatheads and don't know anything. Maybe they had some element of things right.
Yeah, I mean they go through the scientific process as well. It just looks a lot differently, right? It's so, they make an observation. Okay, that felt better. Let's see what happens if I do this for, an extended period. Oh, I grew a little bit better.
Yeah,
Okay, well, that's how things work.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and so we do it as well. It's just in a lab,
yeah,
right? And or in the gym or what have you.
yeah, yeah. Um, I think we've been recording a good bit of time, so I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
this is
yeah.
probably a
A
pretty
lot.
good place to close here. Um, Anything else you want to cover? I think in the next chat we can probably maybe talk a little bit more about that off season a little bit, and then talk about my 2024 prep. So, um, yeah, I think that
Yeah, I not off the top of my head. I again, we could take any of those tangents and go down
As
another
as,
hour-long
as anyone
conversation.
who's listening can tell, we have lots of tangents.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, I think it'd be good to leave some things to chat about in the next episode.
Yeah, for sure, man. I'm glad we could tee this up and do this first episode here.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's been great.
Cool, man. I'll shut it down here. And yeah, if there's anything like you have questions for Josh or I about, we've been working together for 5 years or anything you do want us to cover or talk about, there's a very good chance him and I have talked about it at some point, either
More than
formally or
likely.
informally.
More
But
than likely.
more than likely, we text a lot like, "Hey, I'm
Yeah,
trying this new cool thing."
yeah.
All the time. But yeah, leave it below and we'll cover some more in the next episode.